In just 1 year of Hande Erçel's career, so many pivotal scenes unfolded that it felt as if someone were editing her life according to the rules of big cinema. Red carpets gave way to shooting pavilions, fashion capitals to airports, and loud headlines about her personal life to new contracts and premieres. And if you're used to thinking of Hande only as an actress, this year revealed her on a different scale, as an international industry figure who holds herself with equal confidence on the Cannes carpet, in the frame of an advertising campaign, and in the role of the author of her own story. In this video, we'll break it all down point by point without any unnecessary fluff. Exactly where and why Hande found herself in the focus of global media, how her appearances at the Joy Awards and in fashion capitals strengthened her status not just as a Tease star, but as the face of global brands, what her premieres in Europe, Moscow, and on platforms gave her, how one cancelled series neither diminished her popularity nor slowed her work pace, why encounters with Kerem Bürsin, even rare and accidental, once again stir waves of emotion in the fan community, and how, against this backdrop, a new romantic line with producer Onur Güvenatam emerges in the info space, which Hande comments on cautiously but clearly enough for everyone to understand. The plot has truly begun. And in the finale, we'll shift the camera to Kerem. What happened in his year? How his professional trajectory changed, which projects and advertising contracts strengthened his presence in the industry, and why the Hande Kerem pair still remains that very story that viewers are in no way ready to let go of. This will be a cinematic essay about a year that turned everyday life into a series of premieres, and left the main feeling at the end: the continuation is inevitable.
Subscribe to our channel to always stay in the loop with the most fascinating content. And now, let's get started.
What happened in 1 year for Hande Erçel, point by point? Joy Awards 2025, a moment of Middle Eastern scale. The Joy Awards are not just a social appearance. They are a signal to the market. You are recognized and awaited in a territory where big budgets, big brands, and a big audience are now concentrated. In 2025, Hande appeared there alone, and with that emphasized the independence of her image, without a pair, without extra explanations, just her and her status. Media and fashion reviews noted her as one of the most discussed guests of the evening, because in such events, it's not just the dress that matters, but what stands behind it. International recognition, career discipline, and the ability to hold the frame as if the red carpet is your stage. January 2025, Rüzgara Bırak and the Moscow premiere, a test of overseas fan base. January became a month of live audience for Hande, when popularity is measured not by likes, but by how many people actually come out in the cold and wait. The Moscow premiere showed exactly that, and simultaneously became a test of scale. How a star of Turkish projects generates buzz beyond Turkey, how fan communities work, how the press reacts, how brands read this interest. For Hande, such trips are not visits for photos, but a tool for strengthening the market. You're invited where there's demand for you, meaning your media weight is growing. Paris Fashion Week 2025, the link with Elie Saab, high fashion as a language of status. Paris Fashion Week in her case is not a stroll in the front row, but a continuation of her career by other means. When the name Elie Saab appears nearby, it automatically raises the bar of perception. You're read not only as a heroine of series, but of the high picture, where plasticity, poise, and image precision matter. And this works for the future. Such appearances make an actress convenient for international campaigns because she already organically fits into the aesthetics of luxury brands. Balmain in Paris, emphasis on the power of the image. The Balmain story in her info space is important because Balmain is always about the power of silhouette, about character, and about hard fashion that doesn't ask permission to be noticeable. There is always buzz around such shows, and Hande's placement in this context solidifies her as a figure who easily switches between romantic screen persona and a bolder, more fashionable European visual code. Milan Fashion Week and the Versace effect, fashion capitals as a career route. Milan is a place where they test not beauty but sustainability. Can you keep the pace, change looks, not lose recognizability, and still look not like a guest but part of the industry? Even the mere fact of regular presence at such fashion weeks turns an actress into a fashion brand, and this directly affects advertising contracts. Companies buy not just a face, but an association with global rhythm. On May 15, 2025, solo appearance as a statement. The fact that Hande went to Cannes alone reads very specifically. She has ceased to be someone's half in public perception and chose the trajectory of an independent star. Cannes is a territory where everyone compares everyone, where any appearance is a headline and any detail turns into interpretation. And her presence there fit into the same line of the year. The international scene is becoming habitual for her, not one-off. Summer, a series of premieres and the effect of continuous movement. In summer, she switches to a mode that usually distinguishes top-tier artists. While the public discusses one appearance, the team already launches the next info hook. In this rhythm, it's not one loud day that matters, but continuity. It creates the feeling that Hande is constantly in the game, constantly on the agenda, constantly one step ahead. Premiere of the project with Barış the Reminder in Berlin. A bet on platforms and Europe-Berlin screenings and premieres are about a European frame around Turkish projects. When they are sold not as a local product, but as an international story. For Hande, this strengthens the image of an actress who can enter different audiences without losing her identity. Milan, where Kerem happened to be nearby, a coincidence that always looks like an event. Even if it's just the same event calendar, the public perceives such intersections as a scene. Because Hande and Kerem have a shared history, and any parallel evokes a stronger reaction than ordinary social news. In the end, one fashion weekend turns into an emotional trigger for fans. They're together again, meaning something is possible. Elie Saab celebration in the UAE and a major interview, entry into the Arab market. An invitation to closed events in the UAE is not a beautiful trip, but a sign that you're perceived as a media asset interesting to the region. And a major interview with an Arab journalist is even more important. It's an attempt to show Hande not only as an icon of beauty, but as a person with a voice, views, and a plan. Such presentation expands the audience. Fans are joined by viewers who come not for romance, but for personality. September, start of the series with Hande and Barış, and project closure. Closing a series at an early episode hits the project, but not necessarily the star. On the contrary, it often separates responsibility. The show may not withstand competition in slots, ratings, or expectations, but the actress remains in the plus if she has brands, premieres, and new releases running in parallel. And this year, Hande maintained the pace, so the closure didn't look like a failure. It looked like one stop on a very long route. Funeral of Nilperi Şahinkaya's mother. A meeting with Kerem that exploded discussions. Such events are always perceived differently. There is no posing or gain, only the human remains. That is why a rare meeting between Hande and Kerem in such a context became louder than any of their social intersections. Fans read a lot into this gesture. Respect, memory, silence between the lines, and that very question that hasn't disappeared for years. What if the connection never went away? Milan Fashion Week, again at the same time. Fan detectives activate automatically. When intersections repeat, the audience stops believing in coincidence, even if it really is the calendar. The usual mechanism launches in social networks, comparing dates, places, frames, glances, distances, and against this background, any new relationships of Hande or Kerem are always discussed louder, because the public has an ideal scenario and it measures reality against it. Paris, Balmain, and Grazia, Italia cover. European media presence solidifies. A Grazia Italia cover is always about an international showcase. In combination with a jewelry brand and fashion houses, such an appearance fixes. Hande is no longer just an actress who is invited. She is becoming a face that sells aesthetics. And when she is called the Turkish face of European fashion, it's not a compliment out of thin air, but a reflection of how consistently she appeared in the European fashion context throughout the year. Rumors about can and didn't go to avoid crossing paths with Kerem. This version lives because it's dramatically convenient. The public loves explaining career decisions with romantic motives, but industry reality is usually simpler. Schedules, obligations, editing deadlines, producer agreements. So the honest position here is, the rumor is beautiful but impossible to prove. And far more important is the fact. Hande is already at the point where her absence or presence at an event becomes news in itself. Pomellato. Interview and gala evening where Hande speaks not about beauty, but about art. It was Pomellato this year that gave her the opportunity to step out of the frame of actress in jewelry and enter the history of craft and culture. Participation in a project with traditional Turkish weaving, work with Mimar Sinan students, and a speech where she directly said that she had long kept this part of herself in the shadows, and the brand saw her and encouraged her to show it to the world. This is important. Such collaborations build an image of depth, not just gloss. Nocturne. Closed presentation and a real shot in Paris. Nocturne uses the same principle. Hande doesn't just attend, she carries the campaign with her image. The screening of an advertising film shot in Paris and the format of a closed evening with the industry is a way to package her as a brand face that connects the Turkish market with European visual fashion. İki Dünya Bir Dilek, Gala, Prime Video, and Hande's new role, author of the story. Here is the main turn of the year. Hande not only acts, she becomes an author, and this changes attitudes toward her. When an actress writes the story herself, it's already a bid for a different level of control and ambition. At the gala screening, the press emphasized the film's emotionality and the chemistry of the duo with Metin Akdülger, and online discussion quickly boiled down to one word: touching. Moscow, another premiere and fan hype as proof of the strength of the Hande brand. If in January Moscow tested her popularity, then a later repeat visit solidifies the conclusion. Her audience here is neither accidental nor one-time, and this works for everything. platforms, distribution, advertising negotiations, because behind the scenes there is always the drive figure. Where you're awaited, there you're bought. Breakup with Hakan Sabancı. Rumors of family pressure and Hande's choice not to tolerate. Here it's important to be honest. The confirmed part is the fact of the breakup and the subsequent change in public rhythm. The unconfirmed part is the motives that tabloids tie to family and entourage attitudes. But even as a rumor, this version explains why Hande behaved so calmly. She didn't stage public scenes or play hints. She simply rebuilt her life around career, and this looks like an adult decision of a person who chooses self-respect. New romance, Onur Güvenatam, and the phrase that started it all, Çok Yeni, Kısmet. The story with Onur exploded precisely because he is not an actor or a random handsome guy, but a producer with real weight in the industry. According to Turkish journalists, it all began with an airport encounter before London and continued with communication during trips and meetings. And Hande's reaction became perfect for headlines. She neither denied nor confirmed outright, but said the main thing, that it's very new, and added Kısmet, meaning as fate will have it. In show business, this is almost an official acknowledgement in the language of diplomacy. 22. London as a base, real estate, and focus on career. By the end of the year, in interviews and backstage discussions, London increasingly sounds like her temporary base, as language, as preparation for international opportunities, as a habit of living at a different pace. And talks of purchasing property in Turkey and London are already part of the image of a star who invests and plans. Here I'll note carefully, details of such purchases are usually not officially confirmed, but the trend itself is logical, with her pace and contracts. The strategy of establishing herself in 2 points looks very adult. In parallel, Kerem's year passed under the sign of strengthening his status as a male brand. More advertising contracts, more social appearances, more presence where future roles are decided. He didn't disappear from the frame. He simply assembled the puzzle differently, sometimes through projects, sometimes through events, sometimes through industry connections. Against this background, he had series projects, including Platonik, Mavi, Dolunay, Otel, and a shooting period from September in Çarpıntı. And even though one project ended, it didn't put a period. On the contrary, it created a sense of acceleration before the next announcement. And like Hande, he found himself inside the fashion calendar. And that is precisely why their intersections so easily turn into info hooks. When two people live in the same industry rhythm, coincidences look like fate. Advertising contracts and male brand status. If Hande's year reads as an international breakthrough through red carpets and fashion houses, then Kerem's looks like a quiet but very pragmatic image rebuild. Less romantic series hero, more face of a big market. He increasingly appears not only in the context of premieres and projects, but as a person whom brands choose to sell a lifestyle. Confident, adult, expensive, without unnecessary fuss. In international press, he is directly called a regional ambassador for Mont Blanc, and this is an important formulation because it transfers the actor from the popular category to the reputational one, where trust from the audience matters, not hype. In parallel, in Turkey, he remains the most recognizable face for mass campaigns. In 2025, ads come out where he becomes the main hero of Turkcell TV Plus advertising. This is the zone where literally the whole country sees the artist, and such contracts almost always mean one thing. You have stably high recognizability rating that brands are ready to buy. Fashion weeks and social agenda. He's in the right rooms. This year, Kerem solidifies another status signal, presence at major fashion weeks, where the public reads not only looks, but the level of invitation. Materials about his trips directly mention Milan and Men's Fashion Week. This is the territory where an actor stops being just a handsome face and becomes part of the global cultural calendar, where people from industry, luxury, and media sit nearby. For his career, this is important for a simple reason. Kerem is forming an international package. Projects plus brand presence. Exactly such a set later opens doors to international castings and platform releases, where not only talent decides, but also how understandable to the world you are as a character. Series: Platonik, Mavi Dolunay Otel, a bet on platform and new audience. A separate line of the year is the platform in the series that expands his audience beyond classic Tease. Platonik, Mavi Dolunay Otel releases on Netflix on September 18, 2025, and is immediately presented as a story where romance works not by familiar television rules, but as a more modern, comedic, dramatic construction. A hotel, secret intentions, love tensions, and two sisters between whom the main emotional axis arises. The key here is not only the plot itself, but the release place. Netflix automatically makes the project translatable for international viewers, and for the actor, this means growth in citations, clips in social networks, and new markets where he was previously known only from one or two hits. From September, Çarpıntı, classic dramaturgy but a short run. In parallel with the platform project, Kerem enters television drama Çarpıntı, and this looks like an attempt to maintain balance between mass broadcast and international platform. The series starts in fall 2025, but information about the final decision soon appears. The project ends at episode 13. And here's why it's important to say this without tragedy or excuses. Series closure is not always about the quality of acting work. More often, it's about rating pace, time slot competition, and channel expectations. For Kerem, this experience works as confirmation of market reality. Even strong names don't save a project alone, but the actor himself after such a season usually moves to the next phase. More careful script choices and bets on projects where he controls not only the role, but also positioning. Personal life and fan myth of return. And of course, show business wouldn't be show business without the personal line. At the end of the year, Turkish media discuss his new relationships and name Selin Yaçoğlu, the presentation as always cautious. They say, noticed, right. But the paradox is elsewhere. Even when the press draws new romances, part of the audience still continues to live in expectation of the impossible scenario, reunion with Hande. And that is precisely why any calendar intersection, any fashion week, any shared info hook is perceived by fans as a hint. This is no longer just about the relationships of two people. It's about the cultural memory of viewers who once believed in their chemistry and now seek confirmation that it hasn't disappeared. Kerem's year summary, what he actually did. If we gather Kerem's year into one formula, it sounds like this. He expanded his supports. He didn't stake everything on one series, didn't live only by broadcast, and didn't try to hold on to one role from the past. Instead, he simultaneously strengthened the advertising front, solidified in fashion and social agenda, released on Netflix, and in parallel worked a television drama, even if it ended earlier than desired. And this is exactly the strategy that most often leads to the next step, either to a larger international project or to an authorial format where the actor stops being just a performer and becomes a figure assembling the project around himself. In 12 months, Hande covered a route that usually takes years, from red carpets and fashion weeks to authorial status, where you're not just the face in the frame, but the person holding the story itself in your hands. She's shown where success is measured by camera flashes. But the main thing happened not under the spotlights, but between the lines, in the decision to go study, in the choice to live more in London, in how she closed the door on past relationships and didn't explain it to the world point by point. And in this there is rare strength, not to justify yourself, not to trade in the personal, but to move forward as if you don't need anyone's permission for happiness. Kerem in the same year took a different but no less important step. He stopped depending on one image and began building his career as a system. Brands, fashion weeks, platform, series, new project. All this looks like an attempt to build a long distance rather than win one season. His year is about strategy, where precise moves work instead of loud declarations. And against this background arises the main nerve, that very intersection point that the public always reads stronger than facts. A meeting of glances at the funeral, coincidence of cities, one Milan for two, one shared context that turned on nostalgia for millions. Because the story of Hande and Kerem long ago ceased to be only their story, it is the viewer's myth about chemistry that once became part of their own lives. And therefore, any silence between them sounds louder than any interview. But the truth of this year is simple and adult. Each of them has their own path, their own pace, and their own price. Hande chooses career and a new chapter, even if everything around begs for a romantic comeback. Kerem chooses forward movement, even if he is still tied to the past. And there is no tragedy in this, it is simply life, which is not obliged to repeat a series plot. We end the video at the moment when the frame hasn't fully closed yet, because this is not the finale. This is a montage cut before the next scene. And the question remains open, as in good cinema. Do you believe that fate will someday bring them together again, not by event calendar, but for real? Or has their story already become that beautiful past that needs to be let go so that both can shine even brighter? Write in the comments which moment of this year was the strongest for you and whose chapter you're awaiting more. Hande in a new international turn, or Kerem in the next big project.